So to start with here, I'm going to actually choose Open an Existing Workspace. And I'm going to browse for a workspace that I already have ready for this. So it's going to be my driveTimeRings.workc. I'll open it up, and we get a map of some BJ's, Costco, and Sam's Club locations in Massachusetts. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a mask around Massachusetts. That way, the only state that I see on my map is Massachusetts. So to do that, I am going to choose Select by Pointing. I'm going to make sure State is the working layer, and if it's not, I can right-click it and choose Make Working Layer. And I'm going to click the state of Massachusetts. It's going to get highlighted in red. Now I'll choose Tools, Reports, Mask. I want to create a freehand mask, and I'll hit OK. Okay, so it blocks out all the other areas. I do want to have them a bit visible though, so I'm going to right-click anywhere in the white space and click on Properties. And I'm going to adjust the opacity of the mask down to around 60. So this will let us still see the other states, but it keeps Massachusetts as the focus. So now if I click anywhere in Massachusetts, it should hide that, and I can zoom in here to get a more detailed view. Okay. So I'm going to open up the Drive Time Rings toolbox, and you can do that by either clicking on Create Drive Time Rings, or you can choose Tools, Routing and Directions, and then Drive Time Rings. The first thing we're going to need to choose is whether we want to plot our drive time rings by clicking locations on a map, or whether we want to plot our drive time rings by selecting from a number of locations from a layer we've already imported. So this could be a layer of your own addresses, it could be a layer of coordinates, something along those lines. I'm going to display a poll, which is going to help us get a better idea of how you plan to create drive time rings. The polls help us basically get a better idea of how our users use the software, and it helps us collect that sort of information so that we can improve future webinars. So if you could take a moment to answer, that would be fantastic. So we're going to start by clicking on the map for our locations, and then we're going to move on to choosing from a layer of points. So the way to create origins by clicking is to choose the first option, which is click locations. And then you'll want to click wherever you want to place your point. So in this case, I'll just click on Boston. That way we have a location in Boston. And I'm going to create 3 rings of 5 minutes. When I hit Create Drive Time Rings, it's going to create those rings. Might take a minute because I decided to make it in downtown Boston, but it should complete shortly. There we go. So it's going to create the rings and it's going to zoom me to where they're placed. So anything in the red area is anything we can reach within 5 minutes. Anything in the orange area is anything we could reach within 10 minutes. And anything in the purple area would be within 15 minutes of driving. And we can see that reflected in the legend down here at the bottom right. If we want to clear locations, we can click on the Clear Locations button, and we'll see my point is going to vanish there. So if I were to create another set of drive time rings, this downtown Boston ring would no longer be created. So now I'm going to plot drive time rings by choosing a layer of my points. The first thing I'm going to do is drop the ring that I already have here. And to do that, I'm just going to right click on the drive time rings layer and choose Remove. That'll drop the current rings. Next, I'll be creating the drive time rings around the BJ's Wholesale Club locations. So I'm going to right click on this layer and choose Zoom. It's going to zoom me to such an area that I can see all of them. It's a bit large, so I'm going to zoom back to Massachusetts with the zoom tools. So now we can see all of our locations. So I'm going to right click on BJ's Wholesale Club and choose Make Working Layer. And I'm going to choose the Select Locations button on my Drive Time Rings toolbox. The locations I want to use are going to be my BJ's Wholesale Club locations. So I'm going to choose that from the dropdown. I'm going to use all features. This is going to make a ring around each feature or each location. And once again, I'm going to make 3 rings of 5 minutes around each one. So when I hit create drive time rings, it's going to create similar rings to the ones that were created when I plotted a point, but this time there's going to be 25 different rings instead of just one. While we're waiting for this, I'm going to display another poll. So when you've done that, you should get a map that looks much like this, where we see individual rings around each location. And in any case, the purple area represents 15 minutes or less from a BJ's. The orange area represents 10 minutes or less, and the red area, which is a little hard to see right now because we're so zoomed out, represents 5 minutes or less. What we want to do next is calculate demographics for the drive time areas. So we'll choose options here in the drive time rings toolbox. And for demographics, we'll click on configuration. We can do a few things here. With the top part, we can customize the individual demographics that we're going to get. And with the bottom part, for feature count, we can actually count individual features. So this could be things like competitor locations, which is probably what I'll do. You could also count landmarks like schools, that sort of thing. So under layer, the features I want to count are the competitors, and I want to count all features. So this will basically count the number of competitors within a 5, 10, and 15-minute radius of each BJ's. And these are based on the competitors' locations that I have on the map here. So you would have had to have mapped your competitors beforehand. Once I've got that, I can customize the demographics. So I'll click on aggregation settings next to the census overlay. And we'll get a dialog box much like this. So this allows us to add new demographics and alter current demographics. You can also remove some demographics if you don't want them. So to add more, I'll click on Filter. And I can scroll through the list on the left, which are all the possible demographics we want to add. And I can use the Add and Move Up and Move Down tools to add them onto the right list, which are fields that we're currently reporting on. So as an example, I'll add households with earnings. I'll also add families to give us a number of families. You can see they're being added down here at the bottom. And I'll also add travel time 90+ minutes. This would be people in these rings who are commuting more than 90 minutes to work. You can add whatever demographics you want, but I'll hit OK. We'll also need to choose an aggregation method for these. So with any of these, they're just total counts. We're not looking for averages or anything like that. We just want to sum up the total number. So I'll check off the add box for all of these. I'll hit OK, hit OK again, and hit OK a final time to close the box. Now I'll hit calculate demographics, and it's going to calculate the demographics for our areas. It's going to create a report. It's going to show all the demographics we were calculating in our areas, and it's also going to show us the competitor count in each ring. We also get a tabular report, which you can save to Excel by choosing File, Export Table, and choosing XLSX from the dropdown here. I'm going to display one last poll here, which is going to ask if you want to see cumulative values for the drive time rings. So if we want to view cumulative demographics, all we really have to do is check off this box that says cumulative demographics. We can also check the box for separate rings, which will allow us to create individual rings around each location, thus calculating the individual demographics for each location from our layer. This will take considerably longer, so I'm not going to check this box, but it's there if you want to. So if I choose calculate demographics again, we should get slightly different results this time. So this time we can see that the population is always ascending. And we have the different rings here as well. So the last thing I'm going to go over is distance and travel timetables. This is useful if you want to calculate distances and travel times between two layers of locations or two sets on a single layer. In this case, I'll be doing two layers. So I'm going to choose Tools, Routing and Directions, Distance and Travel Timetables. And in this case, I'm going to calculate all distances and travel times between the BJ's wholesale clubs and the competitor locations. So I'll choose competitors from the second dropdown, BJ's from the first dropdown. I want to use routes. I'm going to skip routes longer than, say, 360 minutes. 6 hours is fine. And I could also limit it to a number of closest destinations if I want to. I'm not going to check that for this one because we don't have many points to begin with. But if you have hundreds of points, this may be useful. You can also choose to output a table or a matrix. And I'm just going to show you a matrix for now, but a table is a bit simpler and I can go over that in a second. So I'll hit OK. And I'll save the Excel sheet as travel times. It'll automatically pop up. So it should show the name of each BJ's. Mine are all named pretty much the same thing, so it's not super helpful. But we can also see the distances and travel times to each individual location here. So these are the travel times, and the other tab is going to be the distance in miles. You can also choose to output a table, so Tools, Routing and Directions, Table. And I'll just check Table this time so you can see what it looks like. And rather than choosing the name, I'm actually going to choose the address. That way we can get a more detailed view. And I'll hit OK. I'll overwrite the same Excel sheet. And this is what the table output looks like. Basically, it lists all the addresses, and it shows the name of the place that you'd be going to. And then it shows travel time and distance here in the other two columns.